The story begins with the Yagle tribe, a group of hunters living in the Ural Mountains. For generations, they have survived by hunting prehistoric elephants, which they call MAMMOTH. However, a time comes when the MAMMOTH becomes scarce, plunging the tribe into a devastating famine. In desperation, one of the tribe's elders, Old Mother, seeks guidance from the spirits of the earth, pleading for wisdom to save her people. Night after night, she prays until finally the spirits send her a sign. But this sign is not one of salvation. It is a warning of an even greater disaster yet to come. Not long after, a neighboring village falls under attack by creatures known as the four-legged demons. Yagle, the chief of the Yagle tribe, discovers the sole survivor of the attack, a blue-eyed girl named Yagle. According to Old Mother's vision, Yagle is the harbinger of the four-legged demons, who will one day bring destruction upon the Yagle on a day known as the Last Hunt. Despite this, Old Mother does not reveal when this fateful day will come, but reassures the tribe that they should not be afraid. A mighty warrior will rise alongside Yagle, fighting to end the famine and restore the Yagle's former glory. Fear spreads throughout the tribe as they brace for the arrival of the Last Hunt. Ironically, the only one who dismisses the prophecy is their own chief, Yagle. One day, he mysteriously vanishes without a word, telling only his trusted friend Tik-Tik of his departure. Before leaving, he entrusts Tik-Tik with the sacred white spear and the hunting horn. Meanwhile, Yagle's son, Yagle, becomes the target of relentless bullying, especially from a boy named Curran, who taunts him for his father's sudden abandonment of the tribe. As a mentor, Tik-Tik often intervenes, protecting Yagle from the other children, for he alone knows the true reason behind Yagle's departure. Isolated and lonely, Yagle finds solace in Yagle, who is also shunned by the other children. Over time, the two grow closer, and a deep bond blossoms into love. Years pass, and at last, the day feared by many arrives, the last hunt of the Yagle. During this time, Yagle's friend, Baku, informs him that Old Mother believes Curran will be the one to slay a MAMMOTH and will be rewarded with a white spear and Yagle's hand in marriage. Though Curran is undoubtedly stronger, Yagle is determined to be the one to claim victory, for he loves Yagle and she loves him in return. Shortly after, a distant roar echoes across the land. The MAMMOTH have arrived, and in great numbers. Acting quickly, the Yagle hunters quickly assemble. As their captain, Tik-Tik declares that he will lead the hunt, but will not take the final strike. As it revealed that Old Mother has foreseen that the greatest warrior will slay a MAMMOTH single-handedly, claim the white spear, and earn the right to marry Yagle. The tribe's strategy is simple. They will drive the massive creatures into a trap, isolating the largest MAMMOTH. Then, a single warrior must step forward and take its life alone. With the fate of the Yagle hanging in the balance, the hunt begins. Shortly after, the entire hunting party lay low, stealthily approaching the herd of MAMMOTH. Tik-Tik took the lead, luring the largest one forward. As planned, they drove the herd toward a bridge, letting the smaller MAMMOTH pass freely while Baku and his companions set up a net to trap the massive leader. Once the creature was caught, the warriors surrounded it, and Curran waited for the perfect moment to strike with his spear, aiming to end the hunt swiftly. However, in his eagerness, Curran miscalculated, and the MAMMOTH leader easily deflected his attack. The beast fought fiercely before breaking free, still tangled in the trap. The Yagle warriors chased after it, gripping the ropes tightly, until Tik-Tik finally ordered them to release it. Unfortunately, Yagle was entangled in the rope and couldn't escape, causing him to be dragged along. While the rest of the warriors managed to free themselves, Yagle was pulled up a hill, where he was left to face the enormous beast alone. He grabbed his spear and hurled it at the MAMMOTH, but it had little effect. Desperate, Yagle reached for another spear, but as he prepared to throw it, the weapon got stuck between the rocks. At that moment, the MAMMOTH charged at him. With quick thinking and determination, Delay made a final move and ultimately managed to kill the great beast. As per the agreement, Delay was awarded the sacred white spear and the hand of Evelette. The very people who once mocked him now praised him as the great warrior who had slain a Manak on his own. However, Old Mother remained uneasy, fearing that Delay might not have the courage to face greater challenges ahead. Sensing that both Tik-Tik and Old Mother were not celebrating, Delay began to doubt himself. He felt that his victory was not truly his own, but merely a stroke of luck. Troubled by this realization, he returned the white spear to Tik-Tik and released Evolette from their agreement. That night, heavy rain poured down over the Yagle village. Suddenly, from within the thick fog, the four-legged demons prophesied by Old Mother emerged. But they were not beasts. They were men from another tribe, riding horses and led by a fearsome warlord. Chaos ensued as the village was set ablaze. Many were slaughtered, including Baku's mother. The invaders captured numerous villagers to be taken as slaves, including Evolette. As the destruction unfolded, Old Mother commanded the remaining Yagle warriors, Tik-Tik, Delay, and Karen, to pursue the enemy toward the Great Mountain. Meanwhile, she ordered Baku to stay behind in the village. Before their departure, Old Mother blessed the warriors with her prayers. Armed with their spears and enough supplies for the journey, they set out, determined to rescue their people. As night fell, they decided to make camp and rest, planning to continue their pursuit at dawn. However, unbeknownst to them, Baku had followed them from a distance. Fueled by grief and a desire for vengeance after witnessing his mother's murder, he refused to be left behind. Seeing his determination, Tik-Tik reluctantly allowed him to join the mission. Not long after, their journey resumed. They climbed steep cliffs and finally stumbled upon the remnants of the enemy's camp, which had only recently been abandoned. Among the scattered debris, Delay found a broken piece of Evolette's necklace, a sign that she was still alive. Unfortunately, a heavy snowfall soon erased the tracks left by the raiders, leaving Tik-Tik, Delay, Karen, and Baku to rely solely on their instincts and Old Mother's prayers to guide them. Meanwhile, the captors forced Evolette and the other Yagle prisoners to a desolate ruin, the remnants of Evolette's former village, which had been destroyed by the same enemy long ago. The sight filled her with sorrow as painful memories resurfaced. Sensing resistance, the warlord noticed the broken necklace fragment Evolette had left behind as a clue for Delay and his comrades. Enraged, he punished her by torturing her hands, ensuring she would think twice before attempting to leave another trace of her whereabouts. Elsewhere, Tik-Tik and his group continued their journey from Evolette's village, making their way through a vast field of tall grass. Fortunately, the distance between them and the enemy was not too great. However, a mysterious creature suddenly moved swiftly through the grass and attacked one of the demon warriors. Hearing the screams of their enemy, Delay and his companions, who had been tracking them, discovered a massive claw mark, a remnant of the mysterious beast. As night fell and the situation became too dangerous to proceed, the demon warriors set up camp, remaining on high alert against the monster's potential return. Meanwhile, Tik-Tik and his group found the enemy camp and observed them from a distance, waiting for the perfect moment to rescue Evolette and the other Yagle captives. Throughout the night, Tik-Tik, Delay, Karen, and Baku took turns keeping watch. As dawn approached and it was Delay's turn, he noticed Warlord's trusted soldier, One Eye, stealthily approaching Evolette, who was still tied up with ill intentions. Just as One Eye was about to act, Delay intervened, saving Evolette in time. However, in the commotion, one of the enemy's horses neighed and bolted, waking the entire camp. Warlord quickly checked on the captives and, realizing Evolette was missing, discovered a strand of Delay's hair nearby, confirming that the Yagle were responsible. Immediately, the demon warriors began searching the area. As the enemy scouted the surroundings, Delay and his group seized the opportunity to attack the guards and free some of the Yagle captives. Unfortunately, they could only rescue a few before the enemy recaptured several of them, including Karin. With no other choice, Tik-Tik and the others fled into the tall grass, only to hear the terrifying roar of prehistoric predators, giant carnivorous birds. The situation grew even more dire as they now had to evade both the monstrous birds and the demon warriors who were only a short distance away. During the attack, Delay climbed a tree to protect Evelette while fending off the creatures. With great courage, he managed to defeat them, but tragically, Evelette and Baku were recaptured by the enemy. Meanwhile, Tik-Tik lay weakened from his wounds sustained in the attack. Determined to save him, Delay fashioned a stretcher and carried Tik-Tik away from the battlefield. As they journeyed through the forest and barren lands, Delay hoped to heal his mentor by cauterizing his wounds with heated wood. He also hunted alone to provide food for both of them. However, misfortune struck when Delay fell into a pit trap set by another tribe. To make matters worse, rain began to fall, and the pit started filling with water. Inside the trap with him was a saber-toothed tiger, a fearsome Smilodon. Initially, Delay considered killing the beast to ensure his survival. However, he changed his mind and decided to free it instead. Using a wooden beam, he managed to lift the obstruction that had trapped the creature. Miraculously, the Smilodon did not attack Delay after being saved, and he was able to escape from the pit as well. Meanwhile, Tik-Tik's wounds had finally dried, allowing him to regain his strength. In the distance, they saw thick smoke rising from what appeared to be a village belonging to the Naku tribe. Realizing that the demon warriors may have recently attacked the settlement, Delay and Tik-Tik decided to investigate. Unexpectedly, the village contained fields of cultivated plants, grown by the people who lived there. This was surprising, given that they resided in the middle of a barren desert. Additionally, they possessed farming tools, including hoes, something the Yagle tribe had never seen before, as they had always relied solely on spears for survival. While Delay and Tik-Tik were eating leftover food they had found, the Naku tribe suddenly surrounded them. Just as tensions rose, Smilodon appeared, standing protectively beside Delay. Seeing this, Nakudu, the leader of the Naku tribe, immediately ordered his warriors to stand down. According to an ancient prophecy passed down in his tribe, a man who could communicate with a Smilodon would one day arrive to free them from destruction. What had just happened before his eyes was exactly as foretold. That evening, Nakudu hosted a feast in honor of Delay and Tik-Tik, welcoming them as guests. During their conversation, Nakudu revealed that he could speak the Yagle language because, many years ago, a Yagle man had arrived in his village while searching for a new world. That man had lived among the Naku, teaching them his language. As Nakudu recounted this story, he noted that Delay bore a striking resemblance to the man from the past. Realizing this, Delay was convinced that the Yagle man Nakudu spoke of was none other than his own father, Bial. Delay then learned that Bial had lived in the Naku village for years before he was taken by the so-called evil spirits, along with several Naku villagers. They had been forced to travel through the land of giant birds, across vast deserts, until they reached the Mountain of the Gods, a place from which no one had ever returned. According to an ancient prophecy, the Naku believed that one day a man like Delay would appear, one who could communicate with a mighty Smilodon and bring their people back to glory. That night, the Naku tribe quickly spread the news to nearby villages, proclaiming that the prophecy had come true. The man who could communicate with the Smilodon had arrived, destined to lead them to victory. After years of silence, Tik-Tik finally revealed a long-held truth to Delay. He explained that Bial had not abandoned the Yagle out of fear or cowardice, as many had believed. Instead, Bial had left because he could not afford to wait for Old Mother's prophecy of a great warrior to be fulfilled. Desperate to find an alternative source of food beyond hunting the mighty Manak, Bial had embarked on a journey to save his people from starvation. By the following morning, Delay, Tik-Tik, Nakudu, and a vast army of Naku warriors set out to chase down the demon tribe, which was headed toward the land of giant birds. It was now clear that the demon tribe had not only captured the Yagle people, but had also killed Nakudu's wife and kidnapped his only child. The news of their mission spread rapidly, reaching the surrounding tribes. Soon, warriors from various tribes arrived to join the fight, including the Tuk-Tuk and Kara tribes. However, the strongest of them all was the Forest tribe, led by their fierce chief, Quina. Unlike the others, Quina was skeptical of Delay, doubting that someone so young could truly be the chosen one from the prophecy. Day after day passed, and more warriors from various tribes joined Delay in his pursuit of the demon tribe. Together, they followed the tracks of their sworn enemies, determined to reclaim their people. Eventually, Delay caught sight of what seemed to be a giant bird, only to realize that it was no creature, but a massive ship with sails shaped like wings. The demon tribe was using these great vessels to transport their captives, not only the Yagle people, but also prisoners from many other tribes. Among them were Evelet, Karin, Baku, and Nakudu's young son, Tudu. Shortly after, one of the tribal leaders pointed out that although the river was long, it eventually had an end, no matter how far. Despite this, Delay urged his warriors to remain steadfast, reminding them that their families and friends were waiting to be freed. For days, they pressed forward, trekking across the scorching desert, where many soldiers perished from exhaustion and the relentless heat. However, Delay soon realized that by following the stars at night, they could navigate their way to the river's end. Guided by the constellations, the vast army continued their march through the endless sands. But their journey came to an abrupt halt when they stumbled upon a gruesome sight, scattered bones stretching as far as the eye could see. Among them were not only human remains, but also the skeletons of beasts like the mighty Manak. At last, they had reached the final destination of the demon tribe, the place foretold in Naku's prophecy as the Mountain of the Gods, a massive pyramid. It was there that the warlord of the demon tribe had brought his captives, forcing them into slavery to construct the Great Pyramid under the command of their leader, the Almighty. The enslaved were not the only ones subjected to this cruel fate. Herds of Manak had also been captured, their tusks sawed off to render them harmless. One day, the Almighty ordered his advisor to select a prisoner for sacrifice. Unfortunately, a Yagle warrior was chosen, and without mercy, he was cast from a great height to his death. That night, under the cover of darkness, Nakudu and Delay stealthily infiltrated the slave quarters. There they found Tudu, Baku, and Karin still alive but weary. While in hiding, Delay received advice from an unexpected source, an old servant who had once served the Almighty. The servant revealed a crucial secret. The Almighty could only be defeated by someone who bore the Irwana, a mark on their body resembling a constellation. Their conversation was cut short as the sound of approaching guards echoed through the chambers. Delay and Nakudu had no choice but to flee. Before leaving, Delay noticed a familiar bracelet on the servant's wrist and asked where it had come from. The old man explained that he had received it long ago from a man who had once saved him, a man who had since perished. Hearing this, Delay knew without a doubt that the man the servant spoke of was none other than his father, Biel. With no time to dwell on the revelation, Delay and Nakudu made their escape. However, 3 enemy warriors spotted them and managed to follow them back to the rebel camp. Fortunately, Tik-Tik was already lying in wait. As the pursuers arrived, he sprang into action, striking them down with unmatched skill. One by one, the enemies fell before Tik-Tik's might. As he prepared to sheathe his white staff, the last surviving enemy suddenly lunged at him. Tik-Tik reacted instantly, delivering a fatal blow. But in that final clash, he suffered a deep wound to his abdomen. Staggering, Tik-Tik collapsed to the ground, his strength fading. At that moment, Delay rushed to his mentor's side, desperately trying to keep him conscious. But Tik-Tik, knowing his end was near, could only offer his final words of wisdom. He urged Yagle to become the warrior his father had once been, to fulfill his destiny. With those last words, Tik-Tik drew his final breath, leaving Yagle to carry on the fight. On the other side, Warlord, who secretly harbored feelings for Evelette, attempted to force himself upon her. However, Evelette managed to seize his dagger. Before she could act further, the royal guard arrived, driving Warlord away. The guards then demanded Evelette return the dagger, but as she handed it over, they were stunned to see the scar on her hand, an unmistakable pattern of the Urwana constellation. This revelation confirmed that Evelette was the one destined to bring about the downfall of Almighty. Meanwhile, Yagle remained devastated by the death of Tik-Tik. He stood motionless before his grave, lost in grief. But soon, he realized that he alone must now bear the responsibility of wielding the sacred white staff. He had to lead all the tribes in battle against Almighty and his army at the Mountain of the Gods to free the captives held there. At dawn the next day, Yagle and his warriors infiltrated the crowd of enslaved workers to blend in as they toiled on the pyramid. At the right moment, Yagle signaled Curran to release several Manaks. Yagle planned to lure the massive beasts into attacking the enemy forces. As their ambush unfolded, the enemy retaliated fiercely. Curran fought bravely to hold them off, but was ultimately slain. Enraged, Yagle successfully provoked the freed Manaks into charging at the enemy soldiers. The sight of the uprising ignited a fire within the other enslaved people, who rose up in rebellion. The battle raged on, and soon, the top of the pyramid was brought crashing down. The enemy forces, overwhelmed by the unexpected resistance, were thrown into disarray. Sensing the tide turning, Almighty hastily ordered his men to bring Evelette before the gathered crowd. Through his subordinates, Almighty offered a deal. Yagle could take Evelette and leave, but only if he ceased his attack. Despite this, Yagle, the prophesied warrior destined to restore the glory of the Yagle, stood his ground. He declared that he would not only reclaim Evelette, but also demanded the freedom of all the captives and slaves. Furious at his defiance, Almighty commanded his soldiers to strike. Yet before they could act, Yagle hurled his spear straight at Almighty. With unshakable resolve, Yagle killed Almighty in full view of his followers, proving once and for all that he was no god. Inspired by this victory, the united tribes and freed slaves launched an all-out assault on the enemy army. Chaos erupted as Tudu and Baku confronted One Eye, who was ultimately slain from a distance by Nakudu. Meanwhile, the rebellious forces stormed the temple, destroying everything that had once belonged to Almighty. Amid the frenzy, Warlord seized the opportunity to abduct Evelette and attempted to flee. Spotting them, Yagle gave chase. Fortunately, Evelette managed to free herself from Warlord's grasp by stabbing him with an arrow. She stumbled forward, running toward Yagle, who stood just ahead. But before she could reach him, Warlord, still clinging to life, fired an arrow at her. Yagle could only watch in horror as the very woman he had fought so hard to protect was struck down right before his eyes. His grief quickly turned into blind fury. Without hesitation, he charged at Warlord, mercilessly striking him down until he lay lifeless on the ground. Not long after, the entire army succeeded in defeating the enemy. However, Evelette, who had been struck by an arrow, took her final breath in Yagle's arms. Despite leading the charge and saving everyone, from the Yagle tribe to the other clans and enslaved people, Yagle's original purpose had been tragically lost. The journey he had embarked on to rescue the woman he loved had ended in heartbreak. Meanwhile, back in the Yagle village, Old Mother, who had watched over Yagle's journey from afar, sensed that Evelette had passed away. Knowing that the Yagle people needed Yagle to lead them into a prosperous future, Old Mother made the ultimate sacrifice. She offered to exchange her life to the gods in return for Evelette's life. With the war over, Yagle bid farewell to the tribes who had stood by his side in defeating Almighty. Before parting ways, Nakudu gifted him seeds so that the Yagle people could begin farming, allowing them to rely on more than just hunting man-axe for survival. In the end, the prophecy foretold by Old Mother at the beginning of the journey came true. The one who managed to slay a man-axe, no matter the means, would rise as a warrior destined to restore the Yagle to their former glory. Moral lesson from the story: if a spirit warns you about four-legged demons, maybe ask for more details before panicking. They could just be guys on horses. Also, don't trust prophecies that involve marrying someone just because you killed a big animal. Love is messy, and so is hunting.